Quick reminder that the description has a link to a resource website that you can use to help contribute to ongoing Black Lives Matter organizations. You can do a myriad of things like donate to bail funds or sign petitions, all of which go a long way to fighting systemic racism. Thank you very much for your time. Hello everyone, GoldenNova here. An important part of getting better at Yu-Gi-Oh, or really any endeavor, is looking back on the past to help chart your future. And this isn't just some useful advice for self-improvement. It's good to reflect on your mistakes so you can correct them, and also to recognize your strengths so you can emphasize them, but it's also integral to our understanding of the world around us. And while we have ancient architecture and time-worn tomes to look back on, these are but the records of mere humans. To discover the real truths of this world, we need to look towards something older, more primal. We need to dig deep, not just in ourselves, but in the earth around us, to uncover a power that transcends time. To that end, we'll be going over a theme that's just recently been unearthed, courtesy of one Jim Crocodile Cook, the pro-dueling paleontologist. For those not in the know, I sure wasn't, Jim was introduced during the 3rd season of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, and while the crocodile theming may lead you to believe they're all in on reptiles, they actually take after Adamancipator more than anoles. Today, we're going to focus on fossils. But before we continue, a quick reminder to please like and subscribe if you've enjoyed my content so far. That way you can stay up to date on new releases, and my brain makes the happy juice when good numbers go up. Oh, and ringing the bell is a pretty good way to stay on top of things as well. Analysis videos like these tend to do pretty well, but if you like any of my other series like Field Test and Dream Theme, that's a pretty good way to make sure you catch them, as well as my Friday live streams. We also have a Discord where we make memes about how everyone plays Graveyard Hate when they know I'm playing something like zombies. I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. And I also have a Twitter where you can follow me to stay up to date on my bad takes. Thank you for your patience, and now, back to the video. So unlike most archetypes, fossils are almost entirely confined to the extra deck, so we'll start with the card that ties the whole theme together, Fossil Fusion. When you activate it, you fusion summon any fossil fusion monster from your extra deck, banishing materials in any graveyard, except for materials with a specific graveyard requirement listed. If you end up using material from both players' graveyards, neither player can target the special summon monster with monster effects. Also, if a face-up Fossil Fusion monster or monsters you control are destroyed, you can return Fossil Fusion from your grave to your hand. In the anime, this is described as Jim taking 2 fossils and smashing them together to make a whole new fossil, which doesn't seem scientifically or ethically sound. So immediately, the invocation parallels start to crop up. Banishing material out of the grave has been one of the best ways to cheat material in recent years, and having the option to use your opponents is stellar, but just make sure you don't conflate Fossil Fusion with Invocation. They're a Venn diagram, not a circle. You can only use material in the grave, so you can't shortcut any monsters from your hand or field, though I'm sure if you want to use them bad enough, you'll find a way to fossilize them. But before we get into the fusions proper, let's go over some tools you can use to play them more effectively. A through line between all the fossil fusions is that you'll need a rock monster in your grave as material, and there's hardly a better way to accomplish this than with Miracle Rupture. When you play it, you send a level 4 or lower rock from your deck to the grave, then if Fossil Fusion is in your grave, you get to draw a card, effectively replacing itself later in the game once you've used a fusion or two. But we don't just want to send a monster to the grave, we want an effect to activate too, dang it. That's why our premier target is going to be Weathering Soldier. They're a level 4 rock monster with 2000 attack and 1200 defense. If they're sent to the grave by a card effect or destroyed by battle, you can add a Fossil Fusion, or any card that specifically lists Fossil Fusion in its card text, from your deck to your hand. Also, during your end phase, Weathering Soldier loses 600 attack as the sands of time progress, so despite the gargantuan stats on this normal summon, you aren't going to be able to use it for very long. But the main reason we run them is to send them to the grave off of Miracle Rupture to in turn search Fossil Fusion. This means that Rupture is going to usually replace itself, and if you have Fossil Fusion in grave, it's an engage. Okay, Rupture has a hard once per turn clause, so it's not really an engage, but it's certainly not going to erode your card advantage. We'll go more into what else you can search with Weathering Soldier later, but for now, let's start talking about some fusions. We've got 5 of them, and they can be split between Fossil Warriors and Fossil Dragons, but regardless, they all have a few similarities. They're all Earth-Rock fusion monsters, and they all must first be fusion summoned by Fossil Fusion. Their fusion materials are also always a rock monster, and another monster that fits into a particular range of levels, so no Xyz or Link monsters for that one. The important distinction is that your fossil dragons will require the second material to be from your opponent's grave, while the fossil warriors have no such requirement, so we'll start with them. Fossil Warrior Skullbone is a level 4 monster with 2000 attack and 800 defense, requiring a rock monster and another level 4 or lower monster. They can make 2 attacks on monsters during each battle phase, and you can banish them from the grave to add a time stream from your deck to your hand. They're certainly not a priority include if you want to skip over them, but they are nice to have on hand just to make sure you have targets for fossil fusion in more situations. After all, the hand trap is a staple of modern Yu-Gi-Oh!, and every one of them falls into the level 4 or lower bracket. Don't you look at me in that tone of voice, Artifact Lancia. And if you're dueling opposite a deck that stores lower leveled monsters in the grave for later effects, Skullbone allows you to use Fossil Fusion as a way to strip them of those cards, while also putting a 2000 point double attacker that can't be targeted by monsters on board. As for the card it can search, we'll get to it in time. Fossil Warrior Skull Knight is a level 6 monster with 2400 attack and 1100 defense, requiring a rock monster and a level 5 or 6 monster as material. They deal piercing battle damage, and if they destroy a monster in battle, they can make another attack in a row. You can also banish them from the grave to target a monster on the field and destroy them. This is certainly the strangest of the fusion requirements, but thankfully you can use monsters in your own grave for it, so if you're playing Fossil Thunder Dragons, you now have your perfect enabler. Other than that, it's just a strict upgrade over Skullbone, adding piercing as well as not needing to attack a monster on the second swing, and the removal is a nice touch as well. Probably one of my favorite retrains I've ever seen. Fossil Warrior Skull King is a level 8 monster with 2800 attack and 1300 defense, requiring a rock monster and a level 7 or higher monster as material. They can attack twice, deal piercing battle damage, and as a quick effect during your opponent's turn, you can discard a card to special summon any monster out of your opponent's grave to your side of the field. Now that's a kingly effect. You get to press your opponent's monsters into servitude, and since it's at quick effect speed, that means you get all the disruption of a card like DD Crow with the added benefit of bolstering your ranks. Eldritch better watch out, because it looks like there's another Golden Lord in town. Now it's time for our fossil dragons. Skullgros is a level 4 monster with 2500 attack and 0 defense, requiring a rock monster and a level 4 or lower monster from your opponent's grave. They deal piercing battle damage, and you can banish them from your grave to add a fossil fusion from your deck to your hand. Seems a little late to be doing that after you've already got fossil fusion in circulation, but all these banish from grave effects on these fossil monsters seem to incentivize the usage of cards like Gale Dogra and Extra Foolish Burial. I would also say Dogmatica, but A, I don't think they have the same kind of tools to synergize with them as Shadal's do, and B, fossilized dragons are more of an Escaflowne thing. Fossil Dragon Skullgros is a level 8 monster with 3500 attack and 0 defense, requiring a rock monster and a level 7 or higher monster in your opponent's grave. They also deal piercing battle damage, and before damage calculation, you can swap the current attack and defense of the opponent's monster until the end of the damage step, so you can always attack the stat that's most beneficial to you, which is great, because if they're fusion summoned, any battle damage they inflict by way of a monster battle is doubled. So if any of your opponent's monster stats are, say, 500, you can swing at them and end up doing 6,000 points of damage. Combined with the targeting protection granted by Fossil Fusion itself, you have yourself a prime win condition right here. In fact, leading experts in the field have theorized that due to its stats, abilities, and the fact that it's called a fossil dragon means that we're looking at the fossilized remains of Blue Eyes Chaos Max Dragon, having been perfectly preserved between layers of unplayable jank in Duelist's bulk for millions of years. Now let's cover the last few support cards for the theme. Time Stream is a normal spell that has you targeting a fossil fusion monster you control. Then you tribute them to special summon a fossil fusion monster that's 2 levels higher than it from your extra deck, and the summon is treated as having been done by fossil fusion. Also, during your main phase, except the turn it was sent to the grave, you can banish Time Stream and another fossil fusion monster from your grave to summon another fossil fusion monster from your grave. This card is here basically to hedge your bets against what your opponent is playing. If they aren't running any level 7 or higher monsters in their entire list, it's actually impossible to summon Skullgros, and you won't be using any material from your opponent to summon Skull King. but Time Stream can turn a Fossil Warrior Skull Knight into either of them. If we ever get a larger base of fossil cards, I might buy into this, but for now I'm having a hard time recommending it for such a niche interaction, especially because summoning with Time Stream automatically forgoes Fossil Fusion's targeting protection, something that boss monsters cannot go without nowadays. In fact, the only stream I can recommend is mine, which you can find right here on YouTube every— Specimen Inspection is the last card on our list, and it's a normal spell that requires you to reveal a Fossil Fusion in hand at activation. When you do, you send one monster from your hand to the grave, then declare a type and a level. Your opponent then searches their hand and deck for a monster that matches those descriptors and sends it to the grave. Now, this is a -2 no matter how you slice it, but it's unparalleled at what it does, setting up your best possible Fossil Fusion. It rewards your knowledge of other people's decks by letting you laser focus on removing some of their best cards so that you can mulch them for a SCOURGE. For instance, if you know you're sitting across from someone playing an Eldritch variant, you can name level 10 zombie, and you know you're going to get a Golden Lord into the grave, unless they're also playing Supersonic Skull Flame, which would be a very interesting counterplay. If you say level 5 or 9 warrior against Infernoble, you can be reasonably sure that you'll be getting rid of their Super Quantum Red Layer or Immortal Phoenix Gearfried respectively. But this starts to lose effectiveness as you play less popular decks, as you may not be as well versed in the matchup, and also won't be as good after turn 1 against all matchups, since you won't be getting that added bonus of precision targeting key 1-ofs. But I can't help but still want to play it, because the pure wow factor of just pulling a specific card out of your opponent's deck just to make it work for your game plan is such an all according to Keikaku moment that I can't pass it up. There's also a bunch of cards that came out before the archetype proper which don't really do a good job of setting up the theme. Fossil Dig and Extraction both interact with dinosaurs, not rocks, which, I mean, that doesn't make any sense. Fossils are rocks, dummies, where do you think they came from? Fossil Dynapachycephalo has been a staple in anti-meta decks since forever, but all we want to do is special summon, so no thank you. Fossil Tusker is a solid attacker, but does little for the theme outside of giving you a body to stick on board if we can't resolve a fusion, and Living Fossil barely has any targets. Like, you can get back Weathering Soldier, and the fact that it negates the monster effect would have been a really cool interaction to bypass the attack reduction, but then it just slaps on 1,000 attack and defense penalty anyway. It sees more use in warrior combo decks than with fossils, for crying out loud. Don't you just hate it when cards meant for one archetype end up utterly failing in theme, but get absolutely busted in others? So now that we've covered the archetype, how best can we utilize them? I believe the lack of main deck cards solidifies this as a supplemental engine, so we have to look at what it can provide other themes, and I think we can narrow it down to 3. Banishing cards out of the grave via Fossil Fusion, a way to close out games quickly with SCOURGE, and a way to interact with our opponent's grave at quick effect speed with Skull King. But where can we splash these into? One theme that can use fossils very well is danger. While you don't need quite as much help with closing out games, you're already jam-packed with huge, easily summonable monsters as it is, Skull King gives you the opportunity not only to intercept pesky graveyard effects, but also lets you trigger your danger effects during your opponent's turn. And being level 8, it pairs very well with Bigfoot to get into your rank 8s. Try as the designers might, Kaiju have not coalesced into a standalone theme. They're just too useful as removal, and their support too situational in design. But if you make a group of related cards, people are going to want to make a deck out of them, and Fossil may just be what's needed to tie it all together. Gamma-Seal is actually very powerful in Eruption, but since you can't field multiple Kaijus, that means you can't push for game. That's where fossils come in. You already have the levels needed to make Skull King, and if your opponent sets up a huge monster that's almost impossible to deal with, slam a Kaiju on top of it, then use it as food to make SCOURGE, which can then punch over the Kaiju you gave your opponent. As long as we're not running a zombie world variant, a funny idea could be Fossil Vampires. There are already a bunch of level 5s and 6s, so you have access to Skull Knight, and Skull King is uniquely positioned to assist in the summon of DHAMPIR Vampire Sheridan. Why blow up a single card with the grave effect of Skull King when you can use it and a monster Skull King has stolen from your opponent to make the most dapper of undead to destroy and steal more of your opponent's cards? And that's all I've got to say about fossils. Since they haven't shown up in recent tournament reports, it's safe to say that people are happy to treat them as ancient history, but that's the best place for a comeback to happen from. Be on the lookout for anything that comes out in the future that values banishing cards from your grave that needs a little extra enabling, and you might find yourself at the helm of the next prehistoric powerhouse. But now, I want to hear what you have to say. Do you think that fossils have some great potential hiding just beneath the surface, or are they just a bunch of old bones waving their fists at the meta? Make sure to let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed, please make sure to like and subscribe. If you want to help even more, please make sure to share this video around. If you've made it this far, you've probably enjoyed what you watched, and I'm sure someone else you know will too. I've also got a Twitter, Discord, TCG Player affiliate link, all that good stuff which you can find in the description below. Thank you all so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.